Imagine, if you will, a whole nation that was red with Nehruvian socialism. Socialism of the Green Revolution, the self-sufficient stagnation, the standstill economic liquidation. That's exactly the dystopian socialist quagmire that I was born into in 1984, into the old Soviet-esque 5-year national planning, industry nationalizing, private enterprise stifling, freedom-busting old India of 1984. Indeed, the fact I was born in a curfew, where my father had to walk for many miles to the nearest village where the only car was available to take my mother to the hospital in the town. My start of my life is a very hallmark of what internationalist socialism did to the great civilizational nation that is India, and I'm proud to be born in. Now, being born into a family of farmers and industrialists was no guarantee of prosperity, as you might think. Let's be honest, it was this Inspector Raj of that socialist autocrat that was Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Having a phone in our village home was no guarantee that we'd actually get a call. Having a fridge was no guarantee that we'd actually get chilled water to drink in the hot summers because, let's be honest, the electricity never came. And similarly, having a Royal Enfield motorcycle, my father's prized motorcycle, was no guarantee of escaping the mediocre bus service, for there was no guaranteed supply of affordable petrol. But you know what? It continued, and so on, and so on. And no matter how hard my father worked, the state around was not only dysfunctional, but was holding us back, even when we had the money and resources to be doing so much better. In fact, it was a socialist state which then crippled my family's business with a sudden restriction in supply of coal usage, because the state-owned coal mines couldn't supply enough, because everyone was on strike again, as they seem to be going in this country now too. But down to coal quotas, controlled by, you guessed it, more state inspectors. No quota, no coal, no foundry, no factory, and there you go, all of us losing everything that my family had built. But you know what? The one thing that kept a lot of Indians going at that time, in those terrible days, well, three things actually, was the flag, the nation, and above all, the family. With such immense turmoil around me as a child, we had the scourge of terrorism raging around us. I lost my best friend, Kunal. He lost his father, a doctor, to the bullets from the AK-47 of terrorism. 3 uncles lost to the same terrorism. After all, always failing to deliver prosperity and wealth generation, the one thing that leftist governments around the world have always delivered is division, despair, and disharmony. It's true. Now, growing up in India, I was enrolled in my father's old school, APJ school, an English medium school where I grew up with friends who would be amazed when my family, extended family here, would send me, these sort of Western cartoon character little gifts. For them, it was a world that was another star system altogether. They just didn't know where this stuff was coming from. I remember the nostalgia, a great nostalgia, of how a mere Kit Kat was a luxury that my mum afforded my 7-year-old self once a month, because that's all the grey market could muster up at the time. And the word imported meant quality. But you know what? This socialist dystopia also meant that the entrepreneurial streak of young Indians at that time, of the Indian nation, developed even more innovative ways to deliver for itself. The word jugaad, innovation, literally means innovation. And the attitude of making do with what you had was a central core value growing up. Now, when my father bought the family's first car, a small Maruti Suzuki 800. It made news in the locality because it was not the dumb thing. Nobody could afford it, and it was a 25-year waiting list to have one. Same thing with the first color television set. Now, of course, a lot of these things are shared history with a lot of what was going on here in the 70s and 80s. But it was worse. Now, amidst all this life of socialist misery, of food shortages, petrol, permits, electrical rationing, and general hopelessness. The one thing that brought a sense of pride on people's faces around me was the national cricket team winning, was the first Indian going into space, flying the flag, the cricket team flying the flag, the annual Republic Day, people flying the flag. Now the tricolour is what brought together, be it Punjabis, Gujaratis, Tamils, Maharashtrians, Rajasthanis, all very different people culturally, but together as Indians first, valuing the nation that they were calling home. Now more so in all this chaos and upheaval of terrorism around me, the two oases of calm and peace were for me, and for so many other people, the family and the school. Now the family, where I knew I was safe, the school where I knew I was amongst friends and was the way to prosperity. And it was in the school where was planted the very genesis of national identity and being proud of the nation that we all called home, our heritage, our history. Now the first prayers, the first thing in the morning, was singing in the school hall, not just religious hymns, but songs singing the glory of Mother India, of what great foundations the civilizational nation of India was based upon. And instilling in all of us how, as united as Indians, first we had a responsibility to be nation builders, that we had a responsibility to each other as Indians first. Our headmaster would raise the Indian tricolour every morning and the school band would play the national anthem. Now imagine that happening in a British school. They tried it in Pimlico, just across the road, and look at what the BLM activists, what the left did to tear that flag down literally. But that's what needs to happen. And it was in the family that taught me the value and importance of democracy so very early on in my life, when in the 92 elections, when the terrorists held a gun to people's heads not to engage in democracy, my father decided very, very bravely to lend our empty shops to the local candidates he was supporting as to set up their campaign committee rooms. But none of that took away the bare fact that this self-induced socialist poverty, it quickly taught Indians the best route out of it was education, innovation, and improvisation. Yet, my grandfather, who was here at the time, he would tell us how different it was here in the UK, and it encouraged a lot of us to make sure that we could aspire to achieve many of the things that people were achieving here. And going back to my great-grandfather, a carriage wheel-making carpenter traveled across undivided India to find opportunity and generate wealth. And then he dispatched his 4 eldest sons to British East Africa to seek opportunity, earn and send money for him to buy land and build a factory to run and create employment generation for others. But he did so by sending his 5th son, his youngest son, to Blighty. Blighty, that is England. Blighty, the word that comes from Valath. Valath, that is a Hindi Punjabi word. And itself, a great testament to how we have incredible shared heritage as British Indians. Now, with the Nehruvian economy going bust in 1990, and the last of the gold reserves sold, social upheaval abound, separatist movements raging, and armed conflict at our doorstep, my family took the decision to dispatch me, you guessed it, to Blighty, and lay claim to the sanctuary of my British citizenship by descent. And that leads me to move to England with my grandparents. By now, our family having lost literally their whole life's worth of earnings from the factory that was crashed by the socialists. Moving all the way from the green fields of the Punjab to the rustic council estate in southeast London. That was my home for the next decade. I remember going into Belvedere Junior School on day 1 of my English schooling in '92, strongly clutching my English language book from my Indian school because I could write English, I could read English, but I could only speak 2 words of English. Now, before you ask me what those 2 words were, let me first explain to you that first year of living in England, how it was instrumental in shaping my journey thus far. Whilst I had very little in terms of money, resources. What made up for it was a strong family around me. My grandfather, who had been in the UK since 1959, often said to me, he would tell me, boy, this nation has given us a fair chance to really create something worthwhile. And it is only by studying hard that you can rise with aspiration to do better than I did and better than what your father did. And then he would add something that really stuck with me, that it's a grammar school which will really set you up in life, and it's the conservatives who want you to rise and build a life of aspiration. And his words again, he would say, Labour will want you to remain Labour, sans aspiration. And all the while this was going on here, the Central Planning Committee socialists back in India, they were booted into orbit by that brilliant economist turned finance minister turned prime minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. And going on in that grammar school in Bexley, when I went back to India the first time, a real novelty and a completely new arrival in the Indian market was bought by my mum waiting at the airport in Delhi. And it was, friends, a can of Coca-Cola. Free market capitalism had arrived in this old red nation as a red can of Coca-Cola. Now, on one hand, England providing me with life-defining opportunity of a decent education, safety and security of a stable nation-state. And on the other hand, my birth nation, India, finally escaping from the rabid clutches of the commissars of misery. My faith in the nation-state as the core ingredient of delivering stability, security, and opportunity was stronger every day. And that definitively led me to get through school and go fulfill a great passion of mine, international relations. Joining the UK diplomatic service straight out of school, it was a way, I thought, to help serve the flag that had given me everything in life. And indeed today, let's be honest, the Union Jack, as we saw in the Hong Kong freedom protests, and the Indian tricolour across Africa, much of Africa and the Caribbean, is the flag of friendly hope, are the two flags which are the global synonyms of freedom, democracy, and liberty. And all those shared values are what underline why I and millions of other British Indians have this strong belief in the nation that we call home, and that is Britain, and the nation that we all originate from, and that is India. Now, fast forward to today, in 2023, in the last 10 years, with the biggest democratic mandate in the history of mankind, I think Prime Minister Modi has done rather well. He's proven what nation-first, good governance can look like. Make in India, skill India, digital India, clean India, read India, everything nation first. And for millions, it is this nation, our nation, the United Kingdom, which has provided millions with the security of nationhood. And that's something I think is what provides stability of democracy, that is powered by the fruits of free trade, fueled by free enterprise around us, to empower all that aspire to better their lives and play a part in nation building. Our global Britain today is a force for good, no matter what the leftists might say, that we don't have anything to be proud of. Now, I think, indeed, it is the rotten identity politics of the Labour Party that strike at the very heart of what makes Britain great, the integration and the communal harmony that we enjoy. They love dividing people into segregated silos of the politics of envy, hate, and division, a poisonous cocktail that can rot the foundations of our national unity and prosperity. And I think the antidote of this slippery slope of multiculturalism is pluralism, a clear set of defining values that form a core of overarching shared national identity. Now, whatever the faith, whatever the background, whatever the ethnicity, whatever the origin, it should be nation first, flag first. But more than that, I think it's a sense of belonging, sense of identity, and a sense of pride that our nation provides for each and every one of us, and it's for ours to see. Now, the truth is, I think, freedoms, liberties, and our democratic way of life is made possible only by the strong nation that we are blessed and privileged to call home. And be it New India or the United Kingdom, It is our core values of the beliefs in the flag, in the heritage that we inherit, and the family that we come from. That today we enjoy free democracy, free trade, and free enterprise. And I think it is to conserve that heritage that has made us great, to reform the economy that has provided our prosperity, and to defend the freedom and stability that we enjoy, to build families, that build communities, that build society. For all of those are the things that make the nation, and it's the nation that makes us. Thank you.